So Claire, you've written the chapter on organisational design and organisational development. They sound like they may be quite similar. So do you want to perhaps talk about how you see the difference between them?
Yes, well, you're absolutely right. They do seem quite similar, and they're often both abbreviated to OD, which makes it extra confusing. Well, fundamentally, they both have the same goal, which is to help an organisation to improve its performance and to sustain that improved performance. So organisation design aims to do that by, I suppose, changing the organisation's structure to make sure that the structure is the right one for the organisation to achieve its goals, and then various other elements are aligned with that. So if you change the structure, you also need to look at your processes, people practices, systems, policies, things like that. Organisation development is much more general, and it's also a much longer process. So it also aims to help an organisation to improve its performance and to sustain that. But instead of looking at the structure, it looks at generally the involvement of the organisation's people. And that could include their performance, their motivation. So it is sometimes accused of being a little bit woolly and touchy-feely. But if it's done properly, it shouldn't be.
And staying with the theme of organisational development then, talk perhaps a little bit about then how it is done, if it's perhaps seen as being a bit woolly, a little bit difficult to describe and understand. So how is it done in organisations?
Okay, so there are probably a couple of points to make first. The first one is that all organisations seem to interpret organisation development differently, and a way to test this is to do go onto a jobs page and search for jobs in organisation development, and it can range from everything from like talent, learning and development, performance management. So it's really a very, very broad field. And then the second point to consider is the parties involved in it when we think about how it happens. So there's usually a client and a practitioner. So organisation design and development are both areas where sadly it's not always the in-house HR team that get asked to come in and deal with it. So the client would normally be the business, maybe the board. These are both areas where there's often, I suppose, executive level involvement. And the practitioner, ideally, could be an HR practitioner, maybe an HR director or an in-house specialist in a bigger organisation. But quite often it's an external practitioner, and there is a value as well in a fresh pair of eyes. Now, I mentioned earlier on that it can be seen as quite woolly, but actually there's I suppose a process that should be followed to do organisation development properly. So the first phase would be, it's called entry and contracting. So it's where the practitioner and the company, the client, talk generally about what the problem is. What is this OD activity intended to address? The practitioner would then go away and do some research. So that could be looking at business performance data, it could be interviews, surveys, anything to get more information, to really diagnose what I suppose the root cause of the issue is, and to make sure that the right action is taken. And then that would be discussed between the practitioner and the client. Now the next stage is designing the right intervention, and this is where it could be anything from, I suppose, team building activities, coaching, career conversations, getting together to discuss the results of employee feedback. So really the full range of, I suppose, employee activities. After the interventions have been designed and the right ones have been chosen to address the organisation's challenges, they'd then be implemented. We'd follow a change management process, and then the results of that should be reviewed and evaluated on an ongoing basis. And although organisation design, where we change the structure, is a one-off standalone initiative, organisation development would normally take longer. So it could take a few months, it could run over a year.
Okay, and what about perhaps some practical applications of organisational development? Where have you seen it work well in an organisation?
Okay, well, I suppose I'll start off by talking about the reasons why you might do organisation development. So it really depends on the organisation having a very, very solid organisational strategy. So no organisation development initiative should be standalone. It should be linked to the organisation's goals. So it could be the organisation wants to improve frontline customer service. So, for example, in an airline or in a call centre, it could be a need to improve productivity in a manufacturing environment, or it could be high turnover in some areas of the business. So they could be business challenges or people challenges.
So finally, Claire, what do you think are the challenges for organisational development and organisational development practitioners in the future?
I think, first of all, practitioner skill is a challenge. So the ability of HR practitioners within the business to really, it's a very, very strategic area, and it's a great way for HR practitioners to add value, but it does need a very different set of skills and behaviours to, I suppose, transactional, everyday HR. And then linked onto that is the challenge of getting a seat at the table as well, and really making the case for the HR team to be involved in that kind of strategic people project. And then there are also some external challenges for organisation development as well. So, for example, technology. And at the moment there have been newspaper articles, TV programmes with titles like, "Could a robot do your job?" And automation is now going so far beyond like robots in a car factory screwing, identical bolts into a car wheel. They're capable of thinking, using judgment, and eventually there'll be an implication for how work is carried out within businesses as a result of that. There are also things like demographic change and how the changing profile of the workforce in years to come will change things like motivation and performance and how the business has to deal with those. And I suppose finally the challenge of organisation agility. So the business environment is increasingly volatile and changeable and fast-paced. Customer expectations are changing all the time, and organisations need to be able to react much more quickly in a much more effective way, and I think that's a really big challenge for HR teams in particular when it comes to organisation development.
Thank you.